1. Self-directed warfare. 1. Declare war on your enemies, the polarity strategy. Life is endless battle and conflict, and you cannot fight effectively unless you can identify your enemies. Learn to smoke out your enemies, to spot them by the signs and patterns that reveal hostility. Then, once you have them in your sights, inwardly declare war. Your enemies can fill you with purpose and direction. 2. Do not fight the last war, the guerrilla war of the mind strategy. What most often weighs you down and brings you misery is the past. You must consciously wage war against the past, and force yourself to react to the present moment. Be ruthless on yourself, do not repeat the same tired methods. Wage guerrilla war on your mind, allowing no static lines of defense, make everything fluid and mobile. 3. Amidst the turmoil of events, do not lose your presence of mind, the counterbalance strategy. In the heat of battle, the mind tends to lose its balance. It is vital to keep your presence of mind, maintaining your mental powers. Whatever the circumstances, make the mind tougher by exposing it to adversity. Learn to detach yourself from the chaos of the battlefield. 4. Create a sense of urgency and desperation, the death ground strategy. You are your own worst enemy. You waste precious time dreaming of the future instead of engaging in the present. Cut your ties to the past, enter unknown territory. Place yourself on death ground, where your back is against the wall, and you have to fight like hell to get out alive. Part 2. Organizational, team, warfare. 5. Avoid the snares of groupthink, the command and control strategy. The problem in leading any group is that people inevitably have their own agendas. You have to create a chain of command, in which they do not feel constrained by your influence yet follow your lead. Create a sense of participation, but do not fall into groupthink, the irrationality of collective decision-making. 6. Segment your forces, the controlled chaos strategy. The critical elements in war are speed and adaptability, the ability to move and make decisions faster than the enemy. Break your forces into independent groups that can operate on their own. Make your forces elusive and unstoppable by infusing them with the spirit of the campaign, giving them a mission to accomplish, and then letting them run. 7. Transform your war into a crusade, morale strategies. The secret to motivating people and maintaining their morale is to get them to think less about themselves and more about the group. Involve them in a cause, a crusade against a hated enemy. Make them see their survival as tied to the success of the army as a whole. Part 3. Defensive warfare. 8. Pick your battles carefully, the perfect economy strategy. We all have limitations, our energies and skills will take us only so far. You must know your limits and pick your battles carefully. Consider the hidden costs of a war, time lost, political goodwill squandered, an embittered enemy bent on revenge. Sometimes it is better to wait, to undermine your enemies covertly rather than hitting them straight on. 9. Turn the tables, the counterattack strategy. Moving first, initiating the attack will often put you at a disadvantage. You are exposing your strategy and limiting your options. Instead, discover the power of holding back and letting the other side move first, giving you the flexibility to counterattack from any angle. If your opponents are aggressive, bait them into a rash attack that will leave them in a weak position. 10. Create a threatening presence, deterrent strategies. The best way to fight off aggressors is to keep them from attacking you in the first place. Build up a reputation, you're a little crazy. Fighting you is not worth it. Uncertainty is sometimes better than overt threat. If your opponents are never sure what messing with you will cost, they will not want to fight you. 11. Trade space for time, the non-engagement strategy. Retreat in the face of a strong enemy is a sign not of weakness, but of strength. By resisting the temptation to respond to an aggressor, you buy yourself valuable time to recover, to think, to gain perspective. Sometimes you can accomplish most by doing nothing. Part 4. Defensive warfare. 12. Lose battles but win the war, grand strategy. Grand strategy is the art of looking beyond the battle and calculating effect. It requires that you focus on your ultimate goal and plot to reach it. Let others get caught up in the twists and turns of the battle, relishing their little victories. Grand strategy will bring you the ultimate reward, the last laugh. 13. Know your enemy, the intelligence strategy. The target of your strategy should be less the army you face than the mind of the man or woman who runs it. If you understand how the mind works, you have the key to deceiving and controlling it. Train yourself to read people, picking up the signals they unconsciously send about their innermost thoughts and intentions. 14. Overwhelm resistance with speed and suddenness, the blitzkrieg strategy. In a world in which many people are indecisive and overly cautious, the use of speed will bring you untold power. Striking first, before your opponents have time to think or prepare, will make them emotional, unbalanced, and prone to error. 15. Control the dynamic, forcing strategies. People are constantly struggling to control you. The only way to get the upper hand is to make your play for control more intelligent and insidious. Instead of trying to dominate the other side's every move, work to define the nature of the relationship itself. Maneuver to control your opponent's minds, pushing their emotional buttons and compelling them to make mistakes. 16. Hit them where it hurts, the center of gravity strategy. Everyone has a source of power on which he or she depends. When you look at your rivals, search below the surface for that source, the center of gravity that holds the entire structure together. Hitting them there will inflict disproportionate pain. Find what the other side most cherishes and protects, that is where you must strike. 17. Defeat them in detail, the divide and conquer strategy. Never be intimidated by your enemy's appearance. Instead, look at the parts that make up the whole. By separating the parts, sowing dissension and division, you can bring down even the most formidable foe. When you are facing troubles or enemies, turn a large problem into small, eminently defeatable parts. 18. Expose and attack your opponent's soft flank, the turning strategy. When you attack people directly, you stiffen their resistance and make your task that much harder. There is a better way: distract your opponent's attention to the front, then attack them from the side, where they least expect it. Bait people into going out on a limb, exposing their weakness, then rake them with fire from the side. 19. Envelop the enemy, the annihilation strategy. People will use any kind of gap in your defenses to attack you. So offer no gaps. The secret is to envelop your opponents, create relentless pressure on them from all sides and close off their access to the outside world. As you sense their weakening resolve, crush their willpower by tightening the noose. 20. Maneuver them into weakness, the ripening for theatrical strategy. No matter how strong you are, fighting endless battles with people is exhausting, costly, and unimaginative. Wise strategists prefer the art of maneuver. Before the battle even begins, they find ways to put their opponents in positions of such weakness that victory is easy and quick. Create dilemmas, devise maneuvers that give them a choice of ways to respond, all of them bad. 21. Negotiate while advancing, the diplomatic war strategy. Before and during negotiations, you must keep advancing, creating relentless pressure and compelling the other side to settle on your terms. The more you take, the more you can give back in meaningless concessions. Create a reputation for being tough and uncompromising, so that people are back on their heels before they even meet you. 22. Know how to end things, the exit strategy. You are judged in this world by how well you bring things to an end. A messy or incomplete conclusion can reverberate for years to come. Manufacture a reality to match their desires, and they will fool themselves. Control people's perceptions of reality and you control them. 24. Take the line of least expectation, the ordinary extraordinary strategy. People expect your behavior to conform to known patterns and conventions. Your task as a strategist is to upset their expectations. First do something ordinary and conventional to fix their image of you, then hit them with the extraordinary. The terror is greater for being so sudden. Sometimes the ordinary is extraordinary because it is unexpected. 25. Occupy the moral high ground, the righteous strategy. In a political world, the cause you are fighting for must seem more just than the enemy's. By questioning your opponents' motives and making them appear evil, you can narrow their base of support and room to maneuver. When you yourself come under moral attack from a clever enemy, do not whine or get angry. Fight fire with fire. 26. Deny them targets, the strategy of the void. The feeling of emptiness or void silence, isolation, non-engagement with others is for most people intolerable. Give your enemies no target to attack, be dangerous but elusive, then watch as they chase you into the void. Instead of frontal battles, deliver irritating but damaging side attacks and pinprick bites. 27. Seem to work for the interests of others while furthering your own, the alliance strategy. The best way to advance your cause with the minimum of effort and bloodshed is to create a constantly shifting network of alliances, getting others to compensate for your deficiencies, do your dirty work, fight your wars. At the same time, you must work to sow dissension in the alliances of others, weakening your enemies by isolating them. 28. Give your rivals enough rope to hang themselves, the one-upmanship strategy. Life's greatest dangers often come not from external enemies, but from our supposed colleagues and friends who pretend to work for the common cause while scheming to sabotage us. Work to instill doubts and insecurities in such rivals, getting them to think too much and act defensively. Make them hang themselves through their own self-destructive tendencies, leaving you blameless and clean. 29. Take small bites, the fait accompli strategy. Overt power grabs and sharp rises to the top are dangerous, creating envy, distrust, and suspicion. Often the best solution is to take small bites, swallow little territories, playing upon people's relatively short attention spans. Before people realize it, you have accumulated an empire. 30. Penetrate their minds, communication strategies. Communication is a kind of war, its field of battle, the resistant and defensive minds of the people you want to influence. The goal is to penetrate their defenses and occupy their minds. Learn to infiltrate your ideas behind enemy lines, sending messages through little details, luring people into coming to the conclusions you desire and into thinking they've gotten there by themselves. 31. Destroy from within, the inner front strategy. By infiltrating your opponent's ranks, working from within to bring them down, you give them nothing to see or react against the ultimate advantage. To take something you want, do not fight those who have it, but rather join them then, either slowly make it your own or wait for the moment to stage a coup d'etat. 32. Dominate while seeming to submit, the passive-aggressive strategy. In a world where political considerations are paramount, the most effective form of aggression is the best hidden one, aggression behind a compliant, even loving exterior. To follow the passive-aggressive strategy, you must seem to go along with people offering no resistance. But actually you dominate the situation. Just make sure you have disguised your aggression enough that you can deny it exists. 33. Sow uncertainty and panic through acts of terror, the chain reaction strategy. Terror is the ultimate way to paralyze a people's will to resist and destroy their ability to plan a strategic response. The goal in a terror campaign is not battlefield victory, but causing maximum chaos and provoking the other side into desperate overreaction. To plot the most effective counter-strategy, victims of terror must stay balanced. One's rationality is the last line of defense. Selected bibliography. Index. Preface. We live in a culture that promotes democratic values of being fair to one and all, the importance of fitting into a group, and knowing how to cooperate with other people. We are taught early on in life that those who are outwardly combative and aggressive pay a social price, unpopularity and isolation. These values of harmony and cooperation are perpetuated in subtle, and not so subtle ways through books on how to be successful in life, through the pleasant, peaceful exteriors that those who have gotten ahead in the world present to the public, through notions of correctness that saturate the public space. The problem for us is that we are trained and prepared for peace, and we are not at all prepared for what confronts us in the real world war. The life of man upon earth is a warfare. Job 7:1, Qui desiderat pacem, preparat bellum, let him who wants peace prepare for war. Vegetius, AD 4th century, this war exists on several levels. Most obviously, we have our rivals on the other side. The world has become increasingly competitive and nasty. In politics, business, even the arts, we face opponents who will do almost anything to gain an edge. More troubling and complex, however, are the battles we face with those who are supposedly on our side. There are those who outwardly play the team game, who act very friendly and agreeable, but who sabotage us behind the scenes, use the group to promote their own agenda. Others, more difficult to spot, play subtle games of passive aggression, offering help that never comes. Instilling guilt as a secret weapon. On the surface everything seems peaceful enough, but just below it, it is every man and woman for him or herself, this dynamic infecting even families and relationships. The culture may deny this reality and promote a gentler picture, but we know it and feel it in our battle scars. It is not that we and our colleagues are ignoble creatures who fail to live up to ideals of peace and selflessness, but that we cannot help the way we are. We have aggressive impulses that are impossible to ignore or repress. In the past, individuals could expect a group, the state, an extended family, a company to take care of them, but this is no longer the case, and in this uncaring world we have to think first and foremost of ourselves and our interests. What we need are not impossible and inhuman ideals of peace and cooperation to live up to, and the confusion that brings us, but rather practical knowledge on how to deal with conflict and the daily battles we face. And this knowledge is not about how to be more forceful in getting what we want, or defending ourselves, but rather how to be more rational and strategic when it comes to conflict, channeling our aggressive impulses instead of denying or repressing them. If there is an ideal to aim for, it should be that of the strategic warrior, the man or woman who manages difficult situations and people through deft and intelligent maneuver. Strategy is more than a science, it is the application of knowledge to practical life, the development of thought capable of modifying the original guiding idea in the light of ever-changing situations, it is the art of acting under the pressure of the most difficult conditions. Helmut von Moltke, 1800 to 1891. Many psychologists and sociologists have argued that it is through conflict that problems are often solved and real differences reconciled. Our successes and failures in life can be traced to how well or how badly we deal with the inevitable conflicts that confront us in society. The common ways that people deal with them, trying to avoid all conflict, getting emotional and lashing out, turning sly and manipulative, are all counterproductive in the long run, because they are not under conscious and rational control and often make the situation worse. Strategic warriors operate much differently. They think ahead toward their long-term goals, decide which fights to avoid and which are inevitable, know how to control and channel their emotions. When forced to fight, they do so with indirection and subtle maneuver, making their manipulations hard to trace. In this way they can maintain the peaceful exterior so cherished in these political times. This ideal of fighting rationally comes to us from organized warfare, where the art of strategy was invented and refined. In the beginning, war was not at all strategic. Battles between tribes were fought in a brutal manner, a kind of ritual of violence, in which individuals could display their heroism. But as tribes expanded and evolved into states, it became all too apparent that war had too many hidden costs, that waging it blindly often led to exhaustion and self-destruction, even for the victor. Somehow wars had to be fought more rationally. The word strategy comes from the ancient Greek word strategos, meaning literally the leader of the army. Strategy in this sense was the art of generalship, of commanding the entire war effort, deciding what formations to deploy, what terrain to fight on, what maneuvers to use to gain an edge. And as this knowledge progressed, military leaders discovered that the more they thought and planned ahead, the more possibilities they had for success. Novel strategies could allow them to defeat much larger armies, as Alexander the Great did in his victories over the Persians. In facing savvy opponents who were also using strategy, there developed an upward pressure. To gain an advantage, a general had to be even more strategic, more indirect and clever than the other side. Over time, the arts of generalship became steadily more sophisticated, as more strategies were invented. Although the word strategy itself is Greek in origin, the concept appears in all cultures, in all periods. Solid principles on how to deal with the inevitable accidents of war, how to craft the ultimate plan, how to best organize the army, all of this can be found in war manuals from ancient China to modern Europe. The counterattack, the flanking or enveloping maneuver, and the arts of deception are common to the armies of Genghis Khan, Napoleon, and the Zulu king Shaka. As a whole, these principles and strategies indicate a kind of universal military wisdom, a set of adaptable patterns that can increase the chances for victory. Well, then, my boy, develop your strategy so that prizes in games won't elude your grasp. Strategy makes a better woodcutter than strength. Strategy keeps a pilot's ship on course when crosswinds blow it over the wine blue sea. And strategy wins races for charioteers. One type of driver trusts his horses and car and swerves mindlessly this way and that, all over the course, without reining his horses. But a man who knows how to win with lesser horses, keeps his eye on the post and cuts the turn close, and from the start keeps tension on the reins with a firm hand as he watches them. Leader. The Iliad, Homer, circa 9th century BC, perhaps the greatest strategist of them all, was Sun Tzu, author of the ancient Chinese classic, The Art of War. In his book, written probably the 4th century BC, can be found traces of almost all the strategic patterns and principles later developed over the course of centuries. But what connects them, in fact what constitutes the art of war itself in Sun Tzu's eyes, is the ideal of winning without bloodshed? By playing on the psychological weaknesses of the opponent, by maneuvering him into precarious positions, by inducing feelings of frustration and confusion, a strategist can get the other side to break down mentally before surrendering physically. In this way victory can be had at a much lower cost. And the state that wins wars with few lives lost and resources squandered is the state that can thrive over greater periods of time. Certainly most wars are not waged so rationally, but those campaigns in history that have followed this principle, Scipio Africanus in Spain, Napoleon at Ulm, T. Lawrence in the desert campaigns of World War I, stand out above the rest, and serve as the ideal. War is not some separate realm divorced from the rest of society. It is an eminently human arena, full of the best and the worst of our nature. War also reflects trends in society. The evolution toward more unconventional, dirtier strategies, guerrilla warfare, terrorism mirrors a similar evolution in society, where almost anything goes. The strategies that succeed in war, whether conventional or unconventional, are based on timeless psychology, and great military failures have much to teach us about human stupidity and the limits of force in any arena. The strategic ideal in war being supremely rational and emotionally balanced, striving to win with minimum bloodshed and loss of resources, has infinite application and relevance to our daily battles. Inculcated with the values of our times, many will argue that organized war is inherently barbaric, a relic of man's violent past and something to be overcome for good. To promote the arts of warfare in a social setting, they will say, is to stand in the way of progress and to encourage conflict and dissension. Isn't there enough of that in the world? This argument is very seductive, but not at all reasonable. There will always be those in society and in the world at large who are more aggressive than we are, who find ways to get what they want by hook or by crook. We must be vigilant and must know how to defend ourselves against such types. Civilized values are not furthered if we are forced to surrender to those who are crafty and strong. In fact, being pacifists in the face of such wolves is the source of endless tragedy.